Good morning to those of you who have already shown up. Thanks very much for being here. My name is Nicholas. I am from Canopy, the EAP. We're going to dive into slides at about 10:02. I am counting on quite a few people showing up still. So we're going to hold until about 10:02. Then we'll do a little housekeeping and dive into some slides. Again, thanks everybody for being here. Just hang out for a moment. Thanks again to those of you who are already here. We are going to just wait another moment or two, allow some people to find their way on over to us. It is just now straight up 10. Good morning to those of you who are joining us. It is just now 10:01. We're going to hold for just one more minute, as I am literally expecting another 100 people to show up. Thanks very much for your patience. We're going to dive into that housekeeping in just a moment. Once again, thanks to those of you who have arrived already. It is just now 10:02. I'm going to go over a little bit of housekeeping here with GoToWebinar. Since we are using GoToWebinar, it is such the case that if I turn my camera on, you can see me, but I can't see you. You can hear me, but I can't hear you. So as we continue throughout the training, we will be communicating via the questions tab. Find that questions tab, type in your question, shows up at my end anonymously. I am able then to answer that as quickly as I can. But as I mentioned before, it is such the case that you can see me, but I can't see you. You can hear me, but I can't hear you. We're not going to use the chat tab. We're going to use the questions tab. Continuing to look at that control panel, depending on which version of GoToWebinar you have. You may be seeing a materials tab, or you may be seeing a handouts tab. Either way, it's got a little paper clip attached to it. When we are talking handouts, what's available to you are these slides in PDF form, so you can click and drag that on over to your desktop. Personal Politics and Professionalism, the slide deck is available. Also under that handouts or materials tab, you will find a webinar tech help document. I know we're kind of getting rolling here just in the early hours, but if you've already had some concerns about your Wi-Fi connectivity, if you've been dropped off a call already this morning, then go ahead and click and drag that webinar tech help document on over to your desktop. That all being said, we are here to discuss personal politics and professionalism. I'm going to share my screen, make sure that we are all seeing what we need to see here. Double check, make sure you can see personal politics and professionalism. That's right. One last time for those of you who have just joined us, if you have a question or a comment, would like me to return to a slide or offer some additional clarity, please use the questions tab, not the chat tab. There are handouts available for you under the handouts or materials tab. My name is Nicholas. I am from Canopy, the EAP. And we're going to dive into some slides. Personal politics and professionalism is what brings us here today, and of course, it is probably because of that election season agenda. We are definitely in the thick of it. We are actually coming to what might be the close of an election season, but we don't know. We certainly know that there's a big event coming up in less than 30 days. We also know that probably won't be the end of the discussion on that very day. So what we are going to discuss today, as we do our best to navigate, cope, but also proactively prepare for what might be a challenging season. If it hasn't already been a challenging season for you yet, it's possible it may be challenging for you coming up. We are going to cover today the impact of the political climate, responding to political tension, workplace safety versus self-expression, clarifying professional boundaries, and recovery in progress. I'm dragging my heels just a little bit because I can see that attendee number still ticking northward. Want to make sure that everyone who wants to be here is here. We're also making a recording of this particular training. So if you needed to, you could return to this recording, return to this slide deck for your reference. Starting off with the impact of the political climate. Now, the impact is going to be different for you and compared to the person next to you because it has everything to do with how we respond to it. It has everything to do with how much we are hearing. A lot of it is going to be unique person to person, our tolerance levels, our ability to be patient, our ability to listen. Sometimes it has to do with growth mindset or fixed mindset. But know that we are all responding to it a little bit differently. And we're going to do our best to make it through this particular season. Now, when we talk about campaign and propaganda, when it comes to those political ads, we know they are trying to sway us. It is not an informational, it is propaganda. Doing what they can to convince us one way or the other. So it is going to be using those marketing techniques that we are familiar with. It's going to be using those advertising techniques that we are familiar with. One that comes to mind is you don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle. Meaning the facts are going to be what they are, but how those facts impact, how those details affect, how they are perceived and interpreted by the consumer in this case, or the voter, depending on how you look at it. We definitely know that the messaging that is coming to us is biased and it is attempting to sway us. It's designed to rile us up when it is going for our emotions. And oftentimes, it's going to go right past that emotional center of your brain, reaches right into that fear center. Reaches for that fear center, reaches for that identity center, really wants to stoke that particular part of the brain. Because if we can engage the fear center, it starts to affect the things that we say, the things that we do, who we talk to, and how fervently we defend the opinions we have. So getting the fear involved works well for marketers, works well for advertising, is exhausting for us. Fear-based messaging is intentionally triggering. We want this, excuse me, not we. The people who are sending these messages, the campaigners, want you to feel deeply motivated. Want to make sure that not only are you feeling it, you're feeling it so much, you're talking about it with other people, become a voice box for that particular campaign. When we engage that deep part of the brain, that fear center, that is our reptilian brain that tells us the fight, flight, or freeze response. And many times, political messaging is targeting that deep part of our brain, trying to get us worked up, trying to get us angry, trying to get us a little bit fearful so that they can better mold that energy toward the benefit of their campaign. Now, issue and policy messaging, you've probably seen this. It's easily understood so that it can be easily spread. Complex issues are often boiled down to you're either for it or against it. Nuance kind of had its moment, but right now we are looking for polarization, as so many of our advertisements will tell us. So when it's reduced a complex issue down to just are you for it or against it, it becomes easier to transmit what are you voting for or how are you voting? What camp do you belong in when it is down to black or white, yes or no, this or that? Core values are cited for membership. Well, you better believe this, because if you don't believe this, then you can't be part of our group. And everybody who's part of our group agrees to believe this. So, and again, we are talking about complex issues that get boiled down to sound bites that can be easily understood. You're nodding your head, well, that makes sense to me. It's also simple enough for you to share with somebody else, spread that message. And when it comes to the messaging, it's everywhere. Right now, we are in the thick of it. Every time your phone goes off, it is somebody asking for a donation. Every commercial between every video is going to be a campaign ad. We are hearing it local, we're hearing it national, it's online, it's on TV, it's on our phones. And people are talking about it. People are talking about it in the grocery store, they're talking about it in the lunchroom, they're talking about it in the hallways, and as we drive home. We are seeing issues up on billboards, we are seeing issues on flags, we are seeing intention to vote for a specific candidate plastered all over. And it is exhausting when we feel like we cannot get away from the messaging. It is exhausting when it feels like even our private, and I'm picking up my phone here, even our private moments have become political pathways. So that can be exhausting. But don't worry, things are going to change. We are in this season now, but as each day gets closer, things are going to change. They might get more intense, and they will shift. Things will change from how we are feeling now. Events will develop. The frustration and the unknown that we might be experiencing right now is definitely going to make some progress toward a decision, whether or not it's a final decision. But we're going to see some progress, and what we are feeling today is going to change by next week. When we talk about responding to that political tension, because people are talking about it, and people are fervently talking about it. They are sharing their opinions, they are digging their heels in, they are taking a stand. So, as you consider responding to political tension, internally, for yourself, confirm your sources. Yes, you're hearing a lot, but where are they hearing it from? It can be very convincing to hear the voice of someone you trust, a family member, a friend, a confidant, patiently explaining to you their views and their intentions and their hopes for the issues. It can be very convincing to hear a close friend who knows you well, who might be able to take into account your life and what you are facing, and still they make this recommendation, and still they think you should vote this way. Confirm your sources and see if you can't confirm their sources. Assume that the facts are being presented with an angle or bias. There is no just the facts, ma'am. There is no cold, hard facts. At this point in the political landscape, every fact has got an edge to it. Every fact has got a bias, and the way it is being delivered is oftentimes more impactful than the fact itself. Beware of fear, obligation, or guilt being used as motivators. They know that if they can dig down into your sense of guilt, they are probably more likely to motivate you toward a specific behavior. Same with an obligation. Same with that fear that we talked about at that base of the brain. They are trying to, again, inform those parts of our brain to give us that type of triggering reaction so that we do take action that's beneficial for their particular side of their campaign. So as you are considering the political information you are receiving, think about what is the source. Assume that fact has got a bias to it. And as soon as somebody's trying to scare you, get you into a sense of obligation or make you feel guilty, know that they are doing what they can to manipulate you toward their frame of view. Now, interpersonally, beware of spread the word encouragement. Let other people know. Beware of spread the word, especially when what they are asking you to spread is not accompanied by source material or confirmation. If they just want you to start talking about something or encouraging you to agree with them, and they're not even beginning to cite source material or confirmation, beware. Propaganda is polarizing people's opinions, and disagreement becomes disrespect quickly Because what starts off as a difference in perspective becomes a difference in opinion, becomes a difference in behavior, becomes a difference in belief, becomes a difference in identity. It's a slippery slope when we start with that disagreement. And when things are politically charged, when they are emotionally charged, it's very easy for us to take a difference in perspective all the way to the point of, I stand for something different than you do. That can be a very difficult conversation. That can be a confrontation at times. So beware. Once we notice that there is a disagreement or a differing in perspective, given the information, it could descend quickly into disrespect. Hot button issues can lead to reactive behavior and hostile defensive language. Topics that we don't usually talk about in the workplace are now talked about more often during an election season. People may have very personal viewpoints about the way in which they are voting and some of the issues. And yet, these hot button issues are being brought up casually or often, not in the privacy of our own home, but at the workplace, in social moments. And these are hot button charged issues. These are things which people may have dug their heels in and may have a deep personal belief around. The fact that it is coming up casually in our less than private moments, that means we are bringing some very personal feelings into a public space. And when we feel like our personhood is on display for the public, oftentimes we begin to defend, and oftentimes we react. And so when the personal becomes public, sometimes it does become defensive, hostile, and reactive. So beware of those hot button issues popping up in public. Maybe they're better kept between just two people privately off to the side and less of a table-wide discussion in the cafeteria. When conversation becomes intimidation or bullying, it becomes a work safety issue. This is important to understand because there is a too far for the workplace. There is a too much talk for the workplace, and there are certain topics that are very charged and may belong outside of the workplace or after work hours. When we get emotionally charged, and it's easy to do when we're talking about some of these hot button issues, the very first thing that happens is our rationale goes offline. Our logic goes offline. Our judgment center is affected once our emotions get involved in many of these issues, these policy issues, messaging issues, voting issues. They are deeply emotional issues for each individual. So we maybe already have moved into the emotional part of our mind, which means we have our rationale offline. Note that when we get into that fear center, that reptilian, that deep center there, that fight or flight, unfortunately, the more often that is triggered, the more sensitive it becomes to being triggered. It's a little bit like poison ivy. You wish you built up an immunity, but it's not true. You have a bigger reaction every time. That's what happens with that fear center. So again, know that when the emotions are getting involved, logic is heading for the window. And when the emotions do get involved, it's not as though we don't have ways that we can bring it back. Notice your emotion and don't deny that it's there. I understand. There are 4 generations in the workplace currently, and at one end of the generational spectrum, there has been a message of stoicism. Don't show your emotions. Keep it on lock. Keep everything cold, hard, and calculated. But the emotions show up in everybody. It's an emotional reaction. We don't invite them. There's no calligraphy. There's no RSVP. The emotions show up. Like storm clouds, we deal with them. If we deny that they are there, we add to that emotional reaction confusion and anxiety. Now, don't hear me say, I want you to express more of your emotion. I am not saying get out your soapbox. I'm not saying stand up and shout. When you have that emotional reaction internally, at least name it for yourself. Naming it for yourself means it's going to last less time. If it's a frustration, if it's a jealousy, if it's a disrespect, let's name it clearly and a bit clearer than just saying, I feel bad. Kudos to you if it's a step up for you to say, instead of I'm not feeling, to step up and say, I am feeling and it's bad. That's progress. If you're already able to say to yourself, that person made me feel bad, let's see if we can name the feeling. Name it to tame it is what we say. If you can say, that person made me feel insulted, that person made me feel disrespected, or I am feeling jealous, I am feeling angry. What happens is, as soon as we name it, we start to wrap our hands around that feeling, get better control over it, and we can come back to that rational part of our mind. So, name it to tame it. It's one of the ways we could move through that emotional experience. Now, workplace safety versus self-expression. Each and every workplace has safety standards to which employees will be held. Safety applies to mental health as well as physical health. Intimidation and bullying may constitute a hostile work environment, and mental health costs average $1 million annually for a company of 500. These are just facts. First Amendment rights. Immunity from professional or workplace consequences is not included. If you say whatever you want to whomever you want, whenever you want, there may be a price to pay, especially if you're doing it at work. Speech and or expression can be harmful when it's turned against others. Causing harm violates workplace safety standards. Perspective versus identity. I talked a little bit about it before, but it's worth it to clarify it here, oftentimes because it is fueling some of the things that we say, and the belief that we can say whatever we want to say, whenever we want to say, wherever we want to say, and not have any consequences. If you're saying something, people might be listening. And if people are listening, they're going to have a reaction. That reaction is an example of a consequence. Disagreements on political issues can quickly escalate to defensive existential reactions. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. Avoiding certain issues altogether may be preventative and proactive for the psychological safety of the workplace. And people are talking. It's happening at the workplace. It's happening socially. No matter what we do, the conversation has already started. That horse has left the barn. We can't tell people necessarily no talking anymore about politics. No talking about voting, no talking about people are talking about it. So we got to deal with or cope with where we are now. These topics are front of mind, and advertising is everywhere. So the reason why people are talking about it more is because it's on the mind intentionally. Some people want to talk because they are working things out for themselves, and some people want to push their perspectives onto others. I've already got it figured out. I'm going to tell you how you should think, versus I'm not sure how to think about this. I want to have a dialogue with you and figure out where I stand. Now, the response of each company, since I would do work for an employee assistance program, I'm going to speak a little bit about what organizations can do around the workplace to help set the stage for self-advocacy for other employees. Leadership needs to set the tone of safety for all employees, company-wide. If you can do it in a way that shows that you are speaking to everyone on the same plane at the same time, all the better. Set the tone of safety for employees, and that gives confidence to those employees to advocate for themselves when maybe management is otherwise occupied or not necessarily looking over their shoulder, or maybe you're at a job site outside of the gaze of management where it's just employee speaking to employee, knowing that the company has my back when I raise my hands and say, I don't want to talk about this anymore at work. That is confidence inspiring. That helps me feel psychologically safe at work, knowing that the company has my back. Saying no talking politics at work is fighting a natural inclination to communicate. People are going to talk. People want to talk. So direct and define the expectations for workplace conversations, topics, and spaces. Let them know. Okay, I know that you want to talk about this. These conversations happen in the break room, on the sidewalk, outside, at lunchtime, during your break. And if somebody says that they don't want to talk about it, they're just feeling overwhelmed. Goodness knows we've all seen enough headlines this week. Somebody's just feeling overwhelmed. We need to respect when they say, I don't want to talk about this right now. I'm trying to take my mind off of this. So as an organization, Know that people are going to talk about it, so now let's just shape where they should be talking about it, where they could be talking about it, so it has less impact on that psychological safety at work. Identify examples of potential protocol violation and the consequences, meaning here's how it's going to go. If you are having an easy, casual conversation with somebody and there doesn't seem to be any tension, by all means, that's okay. But the moment one or the other person says, you know what, I can't really focus on my job while listening to this or while trying to talk about this, so I got to press pause on this. We will be respectful. Now, if somebody continues to badger that person about political topics, issues, or how they plan on voting, here's what the consequences will be. Lay it out plainly for everybody so that you can say that it's the same for everybody. We're talking invitation before limitation. I invite you to talk about this at lunch. I invite you to talk about this professionally with your colleagues. I invite you to talk about this after work, on the sidewalk, outside the front of the building, off campus. Invitation before limitation. Consider identifying a shorthand vocabulary so that it's easier for employees to call upon the representation of the organization and use these as reminders to stop a topic before it takes off. I have heard the phrase after 5, meaning it's an after 5 o'clock conversation, meaning this is not a workplace conversation or a topic. And simply by saying, hey, that's after 5, reminds people of the standard that has been set by the organization. Oh, that's right. Certain topics we do wait until after 5 to talk about because it can affect someone's ability to focus on their job. Another effective one is red zone. That topic's in the red zone. Green zone's healthy, yellow zone questionable, red zone needs to stop now because I'm having an emotional reaction and I'm trying to focus on what I am supposed to be doing and what I am paid to be here to do, what I have applied, interviewed, and achieved as my job. I am trying to focus on that. And what you are talking about is making it real difficult. Keeps pulling my focus. So I'm calling it a red zone. I need to be able to do my job. Consider that shared vocabulary, especially as it lends itself to greater confidence and advocacy within your team, within your employees. Now, for each individual, pardon me, let's consider setting some boundaries. Individuals are encouraged to define their own boundaries around political discussions when organizational boundaries are not enough. While avoidance might be the simple answer, oh, here comes this person who never stops talking about who they're going to vote for, I have just decided I'm going to take my 15-minute break. Oftentimes at work, you don't have that option to just take a break right then when you know you're going to interact with somebody that might turn into a confrontation. It is the nature of work sometimes that we have to be working with people we disagree with. And in order to keep our job or maintain our employment, we are sometimes without the option to simply step back and walk away from someone who is being aggravating or irritating. So that would create a situation where an employee felt trapped in a bad situation, and now we're getting close to that hostile work environment. So we're going to need to set some boundaries. We suggest specifying the behavior. Calling out exactly what needs to change keeps the topic focused and less judgmental. Saying, hey, I can't have this conversation happening right here next to my desk while I am trying to answer emails and make calls. The people on the phone can hear what you are saying, and some of the things you are saying, I end up accidentally typing. That is very specific, calling out the behavior and specifying the impact. I just said it makes it difficult for me to type. It also shares your conversation with whomever I'm talking to on the phone. Again, that talks about the impact their choices are having on me. And it does not talk about their intentions. I am not saying, I know you're just trying to get under my skin. I know you're talking loud enough so that I can hear what you're saying because you know it bothers me. I'm not talking about their intention. I'm talking about the impact of their behavior. Stick to that personal experience of how it impacts you and your ability to do your job. Beware of those collective phrases that say, everybody's sick of hearing from you. Beware, that's going to get you a defensive, personalized response. So instead, specify the behavior, specify the impact, and then specify the solution. This conversation can happen down the hall, in the break room, around the corner, at your desk, at your desk. It just can't happen right next to me at my desk while I am trying to work. That is you bringing the solution. Instead of just saying, go away, you are suggesting there are other places where this could be happening. I'm not saying stop, it just can't happen here. Consider setting your boundaries that way by including that invitation of it can happen elsewhere. Try not to talk about their intentions. Specify the behavior as separate from the person. Some of the barriers to effective communication. What do you think stands in the way of people reaching an agreement? When you think about it, when you think about just two people, any two people, whether they know each other, don't know each other, longtime friends or first-time meets, what's one of the things that just could stand between two people? Identify that just as any conversation might have some barrier to your seeing what I'm talking about or understanding what I'm talking about, or maybe my seeing your way of view. What keeps two people from honestly exchanging opinions? Well, I'll answer that one with a little Brené Brown. Remember, Brené Brown always said, vulnerability is the first thing we look for in others and the first thing we hide in ourselves. I might hide my honest reaction because I'm afraid it's going to be used against me, or you might pounce upon my honesty as vulnerability. What are the motivators which sabotage resolution, consensus, and compromise? Well, the need to be right, the need to please others or be accepted. Personalizing is another barrier to effective communication. It comes with that fixed mindset where somebody suggests a potential adjustment, but because that person has already decided, I am who I am and I ain't never changing for nobody, suggesting an adjustment to them, they will take as a personal affront. Competitiveness is also a barrier to effective communication. Just, I don't want you to win this one. I feel like I have lost every other conversation with you, and this time I want to win. Tendency to blame. This does come along with, I should just say, blame shifting is a noted personality trait of narcissists. I'm not saying anybody on this call is a narcissist, but I bet you have dealt with some narcissism in your past. And oftentimes that blame shifting is a symptom or is a side effect, no, is a symptom of narcissism. And defensiveness, also a barrier to effective communication. It's not my fault, I didn't do it. You can't jump up and down on me, blame somebody else. All of this can come across as inflexibility, stubbornness, or fixed mindset. And especially when we are talking about political issues that have become bedrock for some people, they become part of their belief, part of their identity. It can be very challenging to suggest that there may be another way to view this particular moment. When we talk about resiliency, that is a developable skill. The resiliency that you have comes from the lessons that you have learned, which comes from the path you have walked and the experiences you have had in your life. If you have experienced more of one thing or another, you might have greater resilience for it in the future. If you are experiencing something for the very first time and having to figure out how you feel about it, well, that might feel like less resilience. But I know that you know somebody in your office that you tap on the shoulder and say, can you handle this type of client for me? You are so much better at speaking to this type of person than I am. Last time I spoke to them, it turned into a big old fight. I am counting on you and your resilience in the face of that particular type of attitude. Mental agility is just the ability to look at there's more than one way to come to a conclusion. Even if we come to the same conclusion, we may have gotten there through different pathways. Being willing to acknowledge people put together facts in different ways than I do and still come to the same conclusion, that can be relieving. Self-awareness, knowing for yourself, okay, I was having a rational conversation and now all of a sudden my emotions are involved. And I know when my emotions get involved, my rationale is going down. So if I were to let fly with what's on the tip of my tongue right now, would I be using my rationale? Or did they just get me stirred up and now I am reacting with a tone of voice and I'm very frustrated and exhibiting a lot of emotion. Self-regulation might be able to check in, say to yourself, you know what? I am not going to let fly with all those insults right now because I don't think it's going to make this situation any easier to bear. Optimism is, even though it didn't turn out the way I wanted, there is still something to be gained. There is still some benefit. Didn't go according to plan, but let's learn from what didn't go the way we wanted it to. That strength of character, you're going to feel better about yourself when you can acknowledge, ooh, emotions are getting involved, and you know what I'm not going to do? I am not going to rise to that bait. I'm going to use a 4 square breathing, 4-second inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale, 4-second hold. And rather than react to the tone of your voice, I'm going to respond to this situation in a way that is far more rational and understanding. That'll help you build connections with people, even though you might have a difference of opinion. Being able to avoid some of those emotional reactions, respond to, well, it certainly sounds like this is important to you. It's important to me too. And we might not ever see the same thing. We talked a little bit about that fixed mindset and growth mindset. I'm going to let you have a copy of these slides when you want them. Just go under that handouts tab, click and drag personal politics and professionalism. As we are thinking about improving that resilience and mental agility, somebody might be bringing you a lot of hot information, might be bringing you a stressor when we can. And sometimes it's on the other side of a 4-square breathing. See if we can't look around the side of all that emotion, all that volume, all that anger. What is the fear that might be underneath? Any good actor will tell you that fear and love drive all characters, and we just wear masks on top of it to either hide or accentuate. Most people are putting that frustration on top to hide a fear or a vulnerability beneath. So when you feel that stressor, when you feel that hot attitude or those spicy words, consider 4-square breathing and looking around the side and say, what are they trying to distract me from? What don't they want me to know? That, you know what? You know, no matter what turns out, no matter how that vote turns out, we are still going to be able to come to work together. You are not getting fired. You are not getting bounced out of here. We're going to find a way to make this work. Being able to speak to that fear that might be driving that frustration might help in de-escalating the whole situation. So consider this conversational tactics. You might need to interrupt somebody. When you do need to interrupt somebody because they are overwhelming you, consider that hand gesture. Whoa, you are overwhelming me. It is not stop in the name of love. It is you are knocking me back. And when you do interrupt somebody, admit it. Say the words, I'm interrupting you. When people try to sneak those interruptions in, just a sec, when they try to sneak it in without being insulting, that's irritating. So instead, call it out. I am interrupting you, and then immediately put it in their favor. I am interrupting you because what you're saying is important. I'm not interrupting you because I have something to say. I'm interrupting you because what you are saying is so important. I want to listen more. Changes that power dynamic right away. So you say, I am interrupting you because what you're saying is important, and I want to write it down, or I can't focus on work. You explain the impact on you after you explain the benefit of the interruption, and then you don't hide that you're interrupting them. I'm interrupting you because. Over talking. They may try to over talk, and we have heard this before. Sometimes it's referred to as when they go high, we go low. But actually, when they raise their volume and intensity and energy, we maintain the conversational tone, reminding them this is how we communicate back and forth. This is professionalism, conversational tone, not yelling and shouting. You maintain that tone and maintain a constant speech until they return to you. They return to your bedrock tone of voice. That doesn't work. Consider catching them off guard by giving them what they want. I will listen to you, you say. Pause. After I've finished what I'm saying. They assume you will not listen to them. They assume they will not have their chance to speak. Let them know. I will listen to you after I've finished what I'm saying. Also consider, I don't know if I put this one on here, I did not. Consider if you need to interrupt them, consider using the name they are less likely to anticipate. If you have been on a first name basis with them, if it has been Jim, trying to interrupt, flip that to what they're not expecting. If you're on a first name basis, go title and last name. Mr. Branson. If they hear something or they are being addressed by you in a way that they are not used to, it causes enough of a pause for you to say, I'm interrupting you because. So consider using the name they are not expecting or not used to hearing from you. That should put in a pause enough for you to interrupt. And also fixed mindset. If you're having a conversation with somebody and they seem like they want to have a conversation with you, but everything you say, they just bat down and swat away, ask, is there any information which would change your mind? And if they say no, stick a fork in it. That's it. They don't want to have their mind changed. They just want a barrage of information coming out of them. Conversation is stuck. Agree that there may be better uses of your time. Stick a pin in it if you want. You can come back to it if you want. But honestly, if there's no information that's going to change their mind, there might be better uses of your oxygen. Now, when it comes to recovery, build into your schedule time for mental health recovery. We are in the thick of it. We got another less than 30 days until we hit election day. And it's different this October than last October than the October before. You are in a season of extra mental stress or duress. So if this were physical stress or duress, if you suddenly needed to run a 5K, wouldn't you take some time afterward to ice those sore muscles, stretch out? You would respond to the feedback from your body. Your body says, I'm sore. We put ice on it. Body says, I am dehydrated. We go for the water. When it comes to physical feedback about our physical health, we are oftentimes more likely or quicker to respond with some sort of recovery process. But when it's mental health, we don't seem to take the same amount of time. If we know we're in a particularly stressful day, we should have as much time to, whatever the version of this is, but mentally put that ice bag, mentally put our feet up, allow ourselves some recovery process from the mental stress, the mental strain. Certainly, when we have, say, dental work, if it's been, say, you get a cavity filled, you think about, what am I going to eat? How can I manage the pain? This is throbbing. I want to put some ibuprofen somewhere. So we know how to respond to it when it's dental health. Why not respond in a similar way when it's mental health? When you've had a particularly difficult day or season, build into your schedule some time for recovery. And that can be just sitting quietly unplugged, not getting any more information, not talking about it anymore, not looking at any more yard signs, but just quietly closing your eyes and allowing your brain to catch up on all the information it's already received. Unplug is a good piece of advice. If you are constantly plugged in, if you have those earbuds in, you are always looking at headlines, the little librarian that lives in your brain that is doing everything it can to filter out the information it receives, that little librarian gets so tired if it's constantly on intake. So put some time and distance between yourself and your devices. If you feel like I have a hard time not picking up my phone, leave the phone in a drawer, walk away for 10 minutes. No problem, no separation anxiety. Do it tomorrow for 15. Do it the next day for 20. Give yourself that space and distance. Each notification on your phone triggers deep brain response because we don't know, oh, is this going to be another headline that makes me feel terrible? Or is this going to be a like for one of my photos that I just posted for my vacation? Difficult to know. The chance that it might be a like for one of our vacation photos drives us to grab that phone. Oh, but it turns out it's another negative. Devices are conduits for both stressors and approval that sometimes can make it difficult to set them aside. And the anxiety of the unknown, That's real. If you remember back, think back a few years when we might have been in lockdown, when we were in quarantine, wondering, how much longer is this going to last? When does normal return? The unknown was stressful in and of itself. So given that the election results are currently unknown, what can we count on regardless? Well, chances are there's going to be a little pushback. We know that on election day, there's going to be whatever result they say, and then there's going to be a process after that where either people fight that result or authorize that result. But we know that it's not going to be wrapped up on election day. So we know that it's going to last a little bit longer than that. So expect some disruption and identify your coping strategies. What do you use to help yourself recover in moments of stress? Think back to other periods in your life that have maybe been not your favorite, but how did you self-soothe? How did you make it through and get back on top? Identify those coping strategies, and if you need to, start scheduling them now. If you know, I am going to be a ball of stress and I want to go somewhere where headlines can't reach me, where I can leave my phone in the hotel drawer and not have to think about it. If that's what's going to help you, schedule it now. If you know that you're going to need to sing it out at karaoke, go ahead and book that VoiceBox private room now. Get yourself a private karaoke party after election night so that you know you have got something to look forward to that is positive, social, and maybe musical. My point is, whatever helps you. If you need to drive your Jeep into the woods over boulders that shouldn't be driven over, if that's what's going to help you recover from the mental stress, put it on the calendar now. Don't wait until you are overstressed and burned out. It's going to be really hard to decide on what's going to help you feel better then. While you've got the mindset now, go ahead and put a date night on the calendar. Go ahead and put a day off work, some PTO. If you know what helps you recover, let's put it on the calendar now in anticipation. And when we talk about self-compassion, remember, we all react differently to distress. What might be a huge moment for me might be a smaller moment for the person next to me. I'm not going to judge them for not getting more angry, not feeling, why aren't you treating this as more important? We react differently. So don't beat up on yourself. Don't shred yourself for having a different reaction than the person next to you. Beware of language that says, I should be feeling one way or I should not be feeling a different way. Nobody is perfectly resilient at all times. You might be fine having a conversation with your friends, but then when it comes to that family head-to-head and you're talking about the issues, maybe that's when the tears come out. That's okay. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. Instead, just cope. Today was a little bit different than yesterday, so it might require different coping than yesterday. Be mindful of getting caught in that perfectionist coping cycle, which is, well, I tried to feel better and I didn't feel perfectly better at the first try, so forget it. You might have to dial it in. Be kinder to yourself and say, we all have those moments of less than resiliency. We all have those moments of wanting that we could be a little bit stronger and more confident, but ripping yourself down isn't going to help you feel more confident. Cut yourself some slack. Chances are you might be the only one who's cutting you some slack today. So go ahead and give yourself a good long cut. Pardon me. Something in the air. Internal and external recovery time. I know. Self-care sounds like an indulgence to some people. Not in this season. I mean, it's never really an indulgence, but definitely not in this season. You got to do something to offset the unexpected amount of mental stress, political stress, campaign stress that's in the air. You got to do yourself a favor and offset it. During the day, know for yourself when you are starting to get overwhelmed, what are you going to do? Is that a time when you look to your teammate and say, that's it, I'm walking for lunch? If that's what needs to happen, then do it. And then remind yourself of what are those things that help you feel better outside of work. Sometimes it's going to church. Sometimes it's volunteering at your kid's school. Sometimes it's going to the forest. Sometimes it's moving money from the checking account to the savings account, grabbing an apple instead of a bag of chips, Whatever helps you feel like you are making a healthy choice, it's restoring your compassion, going to make you a little bit easier on yourself. I want you to go out and get you some of that self-care that is your own signature brand. It doesn't have to be what this puppy is doing. You don't have to book an appointment, drive across town, lay on a table in a darkened room, listening to whale sounds. Spa day isn't for everybody, but everybody does deserve some self-care. So, taking care of you. During the day when you feel that the anxiety is spiking and you want to bring your focus back to the task at hand, consider a mindfulness activity. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things you can see right here, right now. That'll help bring your mind from that anxious moments of the future. 4 things you can feel right here, right now, like the chair beneath you, the shoes on your feet. It'll help pull your mind from those cringy memories of, I can't believe they would even say that to me. 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell in your space right here, right now, and 1 thing you are grateful for. Yes, we know that the final sensation is taste, but we don't want you licking things at work. Bring yourself back into mindfulness by going through the sensory and gratitude map. Pulls your mind away from the worry, pulls your mind away from the cringy. Consider a gratitude list. When you're looking around and seeing a lot of negative headlines and hearing a lot of ire, a lot of negative energy, take a moment, sit down, remind yourself that you have a couple of things, maybe more than a couple of things in your life that you are grateful for. You write all those down on the same Post-it notepad. By the end of the month, you can flip through. It looks like a flip book where you can count your blessings. Square breathing is 4 by 4 by 4 by 4. 4, 7, 8 breathing. That's when we're feeling the emotions have already taken over. A longer exhale, that 8-second exhale, that is using a very controllable muscle in your body, the diaphragm, to inform that deep reptilian part of your brain, which is sometimes hard to reach. You're telling that part of your brain, we are calm, we are not in danger, we are not under threat. Guided imagery, also very effective. If you find yourself overwhelmed and feel like the politics are all around you, drop those lids. Use your imagination to summon up the same sensation as being on vacation. You'll find the same relaxation as if you were actually sitting in that chair with your toes in the sand. Tapping, go ahead and look that up on YouTube. That is a way in which you can bring your mind back to mindfulness and away from anxiety by drawing attention to specific points in your body. Spatial distress tolerance, if you have been curled over your desk, hanging on to that stress in your jaw, in your shoulders, in your eyes, stand up. Stress is something we hold physically. Change your body shape by standing up, moving around, get that blood flowing, change the oxygen exchange rate. You're going to have more solutions. Social supports, reach out to people that have got your back. Reach out to people that are not going to try and shred you down. If you don't feel as though you have someone in your life who's in your corner the way a coach would be, consider reaching out to your EAP. They oftentimes, much like Canopy, do have a coaching program where you can have somebody in your corner helping you make goals and helping you make progress. Maintain a routine. The brain doesn't love change. The brain likes reliability, predictability, and consistency. So in these moments of unpredictability, do offer yourself and your brain some comfort by keeping something constant. Same bedtime every night for the next 3 weeks. Same wake time for the next 3 weeks. Same diet as best as you can. Finding some time in your schedule. Maintaining that routine will put at ease a part of your brain and allow for some greater brain power to be spent on some of those stressors. And communicate your needs. Let people know not just what you need to survive, but what you need to thrive, what you need to cope with this, your social needs, maybe your needs for silence, your need to talk it out, your need to be away from it all, or your need to get to the bottom of things. Communicate your needs to your home team as well as the team at work. Let them know if you need to step back, gather your thoughts, or cool off. That's okay. We much prefer when somebody says, I need to take a break, than someone who stands there needing to take a break, but doesn't know how to say it. Consider, where do your beliefs come from? Might be something in there that could stand an update. We're hanging on to some viewpoints that maybe are from when our parents gave us that base operating system for understanding the world. Well, it's up to us to update those apps, update the software so that we stay compatible with the rest of the people we are around. Deconstructing some of those thoughts, yeah, this stressor might be hitting you, but also, how does this affect the other people around you? How is it affecting your neighbors? How is it affecting your family? Don't just focus on how it might be grinding your gears. Gain some perspective by considering, how is this affecting others? And that expanded awareness, hey, if I said we were all going to learn how to juggle, and I gave you all brand new, fresh and clean tennis balls, and we all decided we were going to figure it out, some of you would want to learn on your own. Some of you would want to learn in a group. Some of you would want to learn with a coach. Some of you would want a juggling book. But if at the end of it, we all come back juggling, isn't there value in examining, how did some other people get here? How did you learn how to do this? Because maybe there's something valuable about the way in which you came to this conclusion that I might be able to borrow, help me see the world in a slightly different way. Now, that all being said, I am more than happy to field questions about this topic or about one of my slides. Type it into the questions tab. I'll receive it over here. But if you need to go, I certainly understand. My name is Nicholas. I am from Canopy, the EAP. And if you would like to reach out to Canopy, here's how you can. 1-800-433-2320, or go to my.canopywell.com. Send us a question at info@canopywell.com. Or if you've got a question about this training, go ahead and type it into the chat now. Excuse me, type it into the questions tab now, and I will answer them as they come through. Well, thank you to all of you. I appreciate your time and attention. Hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Let us know if we can be helpful over at Canopy, 1-800-433-2320. Thank you so much. We'll have another, we might have another version of this training. Any specific recommendations about dealing with differing opinions from parents in your early 20s? I would stick to the behavior dealing with disagreements, and I would point out some of the impact, and I would point out, hey, even if we don't agree on this, what are some of the things we do agree on? If we're going to spend 5 minutes on our disagreements, can we spend 5 minutes on our agreements? Can we spend just as much time looking for things that we do agree on? And can we spend just as much time focusing on what we hope will change for the better? Something to consider there. Thanks so much, everybody. I appreciate your time and attention. Have yourself a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week.